Let me start things off by saying I believe that gun ownership is an inviolable right, an inalienable right, something that cannot be taken away from us, something to which we are entitled by the laws of nature and by nature's God, so to speak. But I also want to speak of how right now, this present moment in time, in the part of the world in which I live, the country in which I live, this is the best time to be in favor of gun freedom. This is the most, shall we say, appropriate time to be in favor of gun freedom and to be unwilling to relinquish this freedom. So there's a bit of a paradox there, because if on the one hand what I'm saying is that I believe this is a right that cannot be taken away from us, whatever the circumstances are, but on the other hand I'm also saying it's speaking of it almost like it's on a continuum. Like there are times when gun freedom's not really that big of a deal, or is less of a big deal than it is at other times. And yes, I'm aware of the paradox, but let me explain what I mean. Let's just say you're not someone who believes that gun ownership is an absolute right. I want to try to reach somebody with that perspective or point of view here and help that sort of person see how there is no better time than now to be pro-gun or pro-gun ownership. You know, if we were living at a time when the state and the powers that be seemed to have a fairly good track record, at least publicly speaking. We never know what they're doing secretly, what they're keeping away from view, what they're not talking to anybody about. So there's always a side of the state and state-adjacent authorities or state-adjacent institutions that we're never going to know about, or that it's only going to come up if it's unearthed, or if it's exposed. If it suddenly ceases to be top secret, like Operation Northwoods, just a few years ago emerged. And if you don't know what Operation Northwoods is, look it up. But that's just one example of many. So if we were living at a time where there was general harmony between the state and the enforcers of the state and the citizenry, and there wasn't much fuckery afoot, then you could say, well, we could maybe be a little bit more mellow about guns. We could maybe be not quite so strident in our rhetoric concerning the necessity of gun ownership. But that's not the age in which we live in. In fact, we live in an age in which there is an incredible degree of fuckery going on by the state and by state-adjacent institutions. The past 2 years have certainly radicalized me. I was already I'm pretty radical, man. I'm already a fringe type, I guess, and I accept that I say that with pride. I embrace my fringiness, but the past 2 years have made me far less mellow about these matters, because there has been such a high degree of fuckery afoot. There has been so much illegitimate activity by the state and by state-adjacent institutions. So many excuses made to take people's God-given freedoms away have been openly exercised across the Western world generally. In some places, of course, worse than others. But if you if you were able to go through the last 2 years without becoming, if not more radicalized, then at least quite a bit more wary concerning believing in the inherent trustworthiness of authority figures and self-appointed enforcers of thought orthodoxy. If you haven't emerged at least more wary, if not more radical, then I don't know. You're either not paying attention, or you are just coming to all the wrong conclusions at the very worst time. But right now, I would say my trust in authority is at an all-time low. And at a time when one's trust in authority is at an all-time low, and it should be at an all-time low. It's not due to paranoia. It's not due to an unreasonable, wild-eyed take on things. It's not due to just casting about and looking for things to be mad about, or to be paranoid about, or to be distrustful about. But rather, it's right there in your face. For 2 years, we're going to do these things to you, and then we're going to do some other. We're going to mess with you in some other way. We've got some other varieties of fuckery afoot now. You think it's over? No, it's not over. Maybe that one aspect of it is over, but next it's going to be, we're going to be drafting your kids and starting World War III and sending them off to some godforsaken place to die. Maybe that's going to be the next thing that they do, or who knows. This is the exact wrong time. Let me phrase it more positively. This is the rightest of times, the best of times, the most appropriate of times to say, fuck no, you are not taking my gun away. Now, we always hear this phony argument, this sophistry exercise by the gun grabbing types. We always hear them say things like, "Oh well, you think your gun is going to protect you? If the government has nuclear warheads, the government has an arsenal that far exceeds yours. So, you think your gun is going to protect you from the government? You're just deluded if you believe that." And here's what I would say to that: if you're the government, if you are the authorities, and you want to take over a particular neighborhood and force the people in this neighborhood to do your will because they've been unruly, they've been pesky lately, would you be more or less likely to take action against these people if you knew they were armed? Right? Yeah, I know you've got missiles. I know you've got, if you're the state, you've got a bigger arsenal than anybody has at his own dwelling place. But it's not like having weapons doesn't act as a deterrent, even with people, even if you're talking about an entity like the state, and again, state-adjacent institutions that have a greater degree of power and a more deadly arsenal by far. Still, there's lots of stuff that could happen, if you proceed against a heavily armed populace. There's a lot of things that could go badly for you, even though you're more heavily armed. Even though, yes, you could just nuke everybody. You could just say, "Oh, that city is just being too pesky. Let me just drop a nuclear bomb on them." You could do that. Yeah, you could. That would be escalating things a bit much, maybe a bit farther than you would like to have them be escalated. So my point is, these authorities proceeding in their illegitimate campaigns, which have no justification under heaven, these authorities will balk much more readily when faced with the knowledge that they are facing a largely armed populace who doesn't trust them and their like, and has more of a "don't tread on me" kind of attitude. They're far less likely to take action under those circumstances than they are if you've got a compliant populace who has been fluoridated into submission and thinks that guns are icky and wants big daddy government to just protect him, to perform the task of protecting him, and he's given up the task of protecting himself because he's just not up to it. He just doesn't. He wants to give his gun away, out of some virtue signaling kind of some interest in making a virtue signaling gesture of how much he is against gun violence. Gun violence is neither good nor bad inherently. It depends on the circumstance. It depends entirely on the circumstance. So, I believe I have made my point here, and I don't believe I can be readily contradicted here. But let me know what you think anyway. Leave your comments below if you wish. Thanks for watching.